Hi guys, so today I'm going to be doing a very exciting video and something a little bit different to what I usually film on this channel. This video is going to be all about different bits, and I have decided to film this video because I went through a bit of a process of finding a new bit for Chevy, and I feel like it would have been helpful if there were some more videos out there that were a bit more like succinct about different kind of bits and how they might work for you and your horse. So that's why I have decided to film this video, so I hope you guys enjoy. I will also leave some information down in the description box below, so make sure you check that out. So just quickly, I'm going to run through a couple of different basics about bits, I guess. I have my notebook here full of all my information that I have found about different bits. So the first thing that I want to talk about is the mouth of a bit. I'm going to call it the mouth. So there are two different kinds of mouthpieces you can get, there are a couple, but I'm going to be talking about these two in particular. The first one is what's called a single joint bit or a nutcracker, and it just looks like this. I will insert some cutaways. It only has one link between the two halves of the bit. And the next one I'm going to be talking about is the double jointed bit, and it looks like this. As you can see, there is a joint in between the two sections of the bit. So these bits are basically the same bit, but one is a single joint and one is a double joint. The next thing that I want to talk about is the cheek pieces on a bit. So there are a couple different ones that I'm going to be talking about. The first one is just the standard loose ring. This is probably one of the more common ones that you will see. Sorry about the noise, bits are noisy. This is a loose ring bit. As you can see, it has two rings on either side of the mouthpiece, and they are loose because they're able to spin independently. They're not fixed like some other bits are. The next one, which is similar to the, my phone, it's ringing. The next one, which is similar to the loose ring, is the D ring. It looks like a D, and it is also it's not completely fixed, so it does move a little bit, but it is fixed at the join between the cheek piece and the mouthpiece of the bit. And the last one that I'm going to talk about is the full cheek piece. So it looks like this. As you can see, it still has the loose rings on the side, but it has this big bar, which is where the mouthpiece connects to the cheek piece, and that is called a full cheek piece. So the first bit that I want to talk about is the one that I first rode Chevy in when I got him, and that is this bit. This is a full cheek piece, single jointed snaffle bit. All of these bits are snaffle bits. They're not like double bits or Weymouth bits or anything like that. So it just looks like this. This is the most standard single joint bit you will find. It has two joints like this, and it goes into the horse's mouth like this. So it pulls back on the horse's mouth this way. This bit has full cheek pieces, so I'm going to talk a little bit about that. The reason that you might use full cheek pieces is for a horse who can be a little bit difficult to turn, or a young horse, because they kind of provide like a railroad on the side of their mouth which guides them a lot more easily than just like a small ring would. Chevy went quite well in this bit. I like the cheek pieces because he can be a bit difficult to turn. At times, he isn't anymore, but he was initially, so I found the cheek pieces on this bit really helpful. The single joint isn't too bad, but it's a little bit dated. Most people don't use a single joint bit just because it's quite blunt. It's not very like directive for the horse. Something wrong with using a single jointed bit is a very basic kind of bit. This bit actually is a very basic kind of bit, and one that a lot of people use on younger horses. You'll be able to find it at most saddleries, and yeah, I'm gonna edit out on the end, yeah. So moving on from that bit, I want to talk about this bit, which is pretty much exactly the same bit. As you can see, they look very, very similar, except this bit here has a joint and this bit is a single joint. So the joint in the middle of the bit sits like this in the mouth. You pull it back this way, and what the joint does is, instead of just pulling on the mouth like a single jointed bit would, like that, it pulls. These sections here pull back on the mouth of the horse. What it actually does is this join here sits on the horse's tongue like this, and it uses tongue pressure instead of pressure on the horse's mouth to direct them. So this bit is a little bit more precise in what you want. As you can see, if I pull on, I don't know how to show you, if I pull on this rein, it kind of leaves this side of the mouth alone, and it will pull on the tongue and the mouth to get the horse to turn. Same thing this way, if I pulled on this rein, it would use the join to pull the horse in the direction I wanted, as opposed to this bit. You can see when I pull on this rein, it pulls the whole mouth of the horse really, and that is why people tend to use a joined bit instead of a nutcracker bit. So this link on this bit is called a French link. It is flat and it is in a dog bone shape. I'm going to talk a little bit more about links, but yeah, this is a full cheek French link snaffle bit. So now that we've kind of talked about the difference between the mouthpieces and the single jointed bit compared to the double jointed bit, I want to talk about a couple of bits in particular, but to do that I need to also talk about links a little bit more. So I've already explained the French link. It is a flat link and it is in a dog bone shape. Another kind of link that you might see is a round link like this. I will do a close up. The difference between a flat link and a round link or a lozenge is that lozenges come in many different shapes and sizes, and they're also joined onto the bit at lots of different angles. Like I said with the French link, it is a little bit of a dated link and it's not as precise. I feel like the lozenge is like a more progressed version of the flat link, and they just are a bit more specific and a bit kinder on the horse as well. So this is the first bit that I want to talk about specifically. I have already said that this was the first bit that I rode Chevy in, and this was the one that I tried next. So this one is a single jointed bit, this one is a double jointed bit, and it doesn't have the full cheek pieces, it has the loose rings on the side. So this bit is called a WH Ultra bit, and it is a very soft bit. I have a bit of stuff written down here, so if I'm looking down, that's what I'm looking at. So this bit goes into the horse's mouth like this, and the lozenge sits on the tongue like I've explained, and it pulls back on the horse's mouth in this direction. So the lozenge is broken in the middle and it has this little circle in the middle. What this circle does is it uses downward tongue pressure. So instead of just having a lozenge that's plain, it uses a little bit more of kind of pinpoint pressure on the tongue. The wheel in the middle is good for encouraging horses to soften and relax their tongue and mouth and focus more on the bit. So this is quite a good bit for horses that are a little bit unresponsive, but it's still a really soft bit. This bit isn't recommended for horses who are really heavy or lean on the bit, which is what I found with Chevy. He was really leaning on this bit, as they kind of lean on the bit in an attempt to evade the tongue pressure of the split lozenge in the bit. So if you have a horse who travels with their head like really high in the air, but you don't want to use a really harsh bit, I would recommend the WH Ultra because it's really soft, but it does use quite a specific point of tongue pressure to get the horse to lower their head and to follow your instructions. Also, like I spoke about, this bit has loose rings. Loose rings are good for horses who have a tendency to lean because it isn't fixed, so they can't just grab onto the bit as much and run because these rings rotate in their mouth when they do that. So this is a really good bit. I would definitely recommend it for people who don't want to use a harsh bit but you want to use quite a precise bit. The next thing that I want to talk about is something that I found a little bit confusing when I was looking for a bit with Chevy. So this is the bit, I'm going to keep kind of referencing back so you guys know what I'm talking about. This is the bit that I first used on Chevy. It has these cheek pieces. If you want to use a bit that makes it a bit easier to turn your horse or helps them a little bit with that, a good thing to use is a D-ring bit. So as you can see, the D-ring bit has flat cheek pieces just like the full cheek bit, but they're not as big. Sometimes people find that a horse can find these full cheek pieces quite annoying, or they can get in the way of horses who have a smaller face. So the D-ring bit does the same thing. It's a lot more direct in turning. It's also got the loose rings, which is good because it doesn't pinch like some fixed bits can. But yeah, it's really good for horses that might need a little bit of help in turning, or younger horses. Also, a lot of race horses use the D-ring bit. So I borrowed this bit off of a friend of mine, and I was hoping to kind of have the link, which Chevy prefers, as I was kind of focusing on using bits with tongue pressure, but it also had the cheek pieces, which I found quite helpful in turning him. This is the bit that I borrowed. The link in the middle looks quite similar to this link. I'll do a close-up so you guys can see the difference. But while both links are flat, this one is flat on the sides and not in a bone shape like this one is. So this is a French link, and this could be confused for a French link, but it's actually called a Dr. Bristol link. Both of these links are quite old school, and they're both quite strong. The dog bone has a tendency to sit a little bit unevenly in the horse's mouth when you apply pressure because of its shape, but the Dr. Bristol is a very, very harsh bit, which is why it's not a good idea to confuse these two bits. So this bit sits in the horse's mouth like this, and you pull back on it. An important thing to consider when looking at bits is that they attach to the bridle like this, but they don't sit in the horse's mouth like that, because you pull backwards and downwards even though the top of the bit is attached to the bridle. So when you hold a bit, always think about where it's attached to the bridle, but which direction you're pulling it in. So you can see when you pull down on this bit, the part of the bit that's actually putting pressure on the horse's mouth isn't the flat part of the link, it's the edge here. So the Dr. Bristol is set on a 90-degree angle when contact is applied to the horse's mouth. So it is actually the slim edge of the link that is applying pressure, and that's why this bit is very, very harsh. It also uses backward pressure into the mouth and not downward pressure onto the tongue like the WH Ultra bit uses. I would not recommend using a Dr. Bristol bit. They are not dressage legal and they're very old fashioned. I did use it once with Chevy while we were on a trail ride, and I found it helpful, but given the research that I found on this bit, I probably won't be using it again, even though I did like the D-rings on the side of it. This is why it's so important to do your research when it comes to bits, because honestly, you could be hurting your horse, or your bit could be fitted incorrectly or anything, and you wouldn't even know. The next bit that I want to talk about is the bit that I currently use on Chevy, and I did a lot of research and I talked to quite a few people about their recommendations for different bits before I purchased this bit. So the bit that Chevy is currently using, it's still got my reins attached to it, is called the Schuler Ver Binded Bit. It looks like this. As you can see, the mouthpieces on this bit are bent. So if I hold it like this, compared to the WH Ultra bit, you can see that this has straight bars and these ones are slightly bent. This bit is quite individual because it works in a different way to a traditional double jointed bit. So generally double jointed bits work by using pressure on the horse's tongue rather than the mouth to achieve communication between you and the horse, whereas a single jointed bit just focuses on the mouth, but it's very inaccurate in when you ask them something, it's not applying pressure exactly when you want it, so it can be quite confusing for the horse. This bit is a little bit different because it has a lozenge link still, as you can see in the middle, so that part of the bit sits on the horse's tongue like this, but it uses a it is the only bit that uses a double joint but doesn't use tongue pressure as the mechanism of action for the bit. So the central lozenge there, you can see, sits on the tongue of the horse. That makes it a lot more comfortable for a horse to have that shape there, that kind of U shape in their mouth, rather than this V shape in their mouth, which is really quite uncomfortable. So it sits like this in the horse's mouth on their tongue, but it actually uses mouth pressure and not tongue pressure to give aids to the horse. So when you pull back on, it's attached to the top here, and when you pull back on the bit, these bars here use pressure on the lower jaw of the horse to send your like signals or whatever you've asked your horse to do to the horse. So this bit is recommended a lot for horses who lean, which is what Chevy did, which is why the WH Ultra did not work for him, because it uses downward pressure. This bit does not use downward pressure on the tongue because it doesn't use tongue pressure to achieve anything. So basically what happens is the horse leans and it's very uncomfortable because it's pulling down on their mouth if they lean. Basically the horse leans on the bit and it is very uncomfortable because of the way that this bit is set up. And so instead of leaning, they use self-carriage. And when they use self-carriage and bring their front end, like shoulder, neck and head, more upwards rather than pulling downwards, it's much more comfortable. There's no pressure, and so your horse is able to relax a lot more in the bridle, which leads to like a lighter feeling in the bridle instead of them like leaning and running, which is so annoying. They sit up and use self-carriage, and then this bit uses pressure on the jaw to send your signals and to bring them onto the bit. I think that's all I have to talk about. This video has been confusing for me. I wrote down a lot of facts and I did a lot of research on these different bits, and I really want to share that with you guys because I think it's really important to do your research about bits rather than just use a bit that you've always used or that your horse's previous owner used without actually even knowing what it does or what it's achieving, because you could be riding a horse that has a tendency to, I don't know, run against the bit and pull, and you're using a bit that's encouraging that, which like doesn't make sense to me. And you could be trying all these different ways to fix the problem, but really the whole time you're telling the horse to do exactly what it's doing. So if you are thinking about trying a different bit or your horse is not going as well as you'd like in yours, definitely do your research. The new Schuler YouTube channel, which I'll link down below, is really good. There are also a couple of other videos on YouTube about bits. Another thing you can do is talk to your local tack shop or get in contact with the Bit Bank Australia, who are linked down below. They helped me so much to understand these different bits and what they do, because it can be really confusing. And yeah, so I would definitely recommend getting in contact with somebody who can help you learn about bits. I also will say one really important thing about bits is to make sure that your bit fits your horse correctly. If the bit is too big, it will poke out on either side of the mouth and not sit flatly against the horse's cheeks, which is really uncomfortable, and it's also sending incorrect signals to your horse. Another thing is if you use a bit that's too small, where the cheek pieces connect to the bit itself could be pinching your horse and causing bad habits or a lot of discomfort. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. Please leave any questions down below. Hopefully it wasn't too confusing. I will do a lot of close-up shots comparing the different links and cheek pieces and everything so you guys can see hopefully what I'm talking about. And yeah, let me know if you guys want me to film any more kind of more instructional videos like this, and what you want them to be about, or if you have any questions, maybe I'll film like a Q&A or something. I don't know, but I hope you guys liked this video and I hope it wasn't too confusing, and I will see you next time. Bye!